I grew up on the banks of the Ohio River, and insects were always a big thrill for me. And I had a dog that loved honey. So every year in the spring, when the water would come up and go back down and the trees would fall, my dog would come home and his face would be swollen because he would brave a few stings to get some honey out of a fallen bee tree. And that was a good signal for me and the neighbors, and we would go find it and just sit and watch the bees. And I always had a fascination for them. And when I was flying, I'm a retired pilot, I flew 28 years. One of my hobbies was reading bee books. And fortunately, when I met my wife, her father was a beekeeper.
So it just kind of followed you throughout your life, right?
It did, and I considered that fate and a sign that that's what I really needed to get into, and that was 17 years ago.
So for 17 years you have been beekeeping, but you're not only a beekeeper. You just told me that you just recently received a very honorable certification.
Correct. I'm a Eastern Apicultural Society, which is the largest beekeeping association in the country for sideliners and small commercial beekeepers. I received their Master Beekeeper certification.
Now that's something that limited people have.
There are 3 of us in Kentucky. One of them is Kent Williams over in Western Kentucky by Murray, and Kent has been a Master Beekeeper for 14 years. The other is Matt Wilson, who is a PhD at Berea College, and I feel honored to be with both of them.
Tell me why you love honey.
As bees emerge in age, they have specific jobs they do. Their glands function at these ages in order for them to do the job that they're going to do as best as possible. It's truly amazing. And the honey they produce around here is basically from trees. Bees by genetics came from the mountains of Europe. And there are no prairies in the mountains or clover honey in the mountains, and their biggest source of honey, especially in Kentucky area here, they do harvest clover honey in some parts of the country, but their biggest sources are trees such as poplar and locust trees. And every poplar tree, on an average, in the 2 weeks it blooms, can produce 400 pounds of nectar.
Wow.
A locust tree can produce 400 to 700 pounds of nectar. And bees are expenditure minded, so they spend as little energy as possible to get as much food as possible, and they produce more.
So has this been a good honey year?
This year has just been so-so. Last year was one of the best ever. Okay. Some beekeepers that don't know anything about bees got honey last year. Besides doing colonies of bees, I actually breed and raise my own queens. And I've been selecting for certain genetics for the past 14 years. And I have one hive this year that may break my record, close to 300 pounds of honey from one hive, and Kentucky's average is about 38.
Wow. So when do you extract your honey?
Honey is extracted generally towards the end of June. 4th of July is a good date for me to have all my honey in. It's just a calendar beekeeper type thing, you know, a holiday beekeeper. We check for mites and diseases and analyze the bees and decide whether we want them to live next year or we want to requeen them and they're not doing what I expect them to do. There's a lot of decisions we make, and during that time we do that. I actually will start harvesting in May, so I do have honey at the farmer's market. I won't have the large amounts that I normally have during May and June, but I want my customers to be satisfied, and I have people that show up every Saturday, and I have several that even bring their jars back.
Oh, well, how nice. Now, where do you sell? Where can people purchase
I sell
your
at
honey?
Southern Kentucky, SOKY, at the up there by the ballpark in downtown Bowling Green.
All right. And do you also have honey in the crop shop?
No, I will have. I haven't, they sold out and I haven't restocked that yet, but I will be doing that. And my wife sells my honey as well, and she's a retired dean at a college, and she's a quilter now. And she owns the fabric quilting side at the Sewing and Vacuum Center, and she sells my honey out there, and we have loyal customers out there that bring their jars back.
Absolutely, because I have calls all the time about people wanting local honey, but it's probably important to know the production season to know when to kind of stock up.
Yes, it is, and also you can go on the internet and there's a website called the Honey Locator, and you can type in your zip code and they'll give you the people that have registered on that website as honey producers.
So that's a really good source.
Yes. Yes, very good source, very good
find
source.
honey.
very
But
good
go ahead
source.
and mark your calendars for July,
Right.
the peak honey production, to come by SOKY Marketplace and purchase some pure.
Exactly, and another good source is your local extension offices. 98% of the associations in this state meet at the extension services. So they have a good idea of who is a honey producer in their area, and that's a good place to check.
Absolutely.
All the males do is they eat and go out and mate with a queen and die. Yeah. That's it.
It's the good
And
life.
in the winter time,